On February 24, 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a military operation in eastern Ukraine.
Russia overnight launched its long-anticipated attack on Ukraine, striking military posts across the country. An unprovoked war in Europe is now underway.
Shortly after his announcement, Russian troops entered Ukraine and started attacking cities with explosion and missile strikes. The Ukraine capital city Kyiv was targeted mainly. The Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky declared military law and asked people to defend the country. He requested help from other countries to fight against the Russian forces. Many leaders and communities worldwide criticized Russia for harming innocent people in Ukraine and hoped the war would stop.
What's very clear to me is that the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine has been a disaster.
This has been a devastating strategic failure for Putin across virtually every front, economic, military, geopolitical standing.
Unfortunately, the war has been going on for almost a year and a half without a break. It has resulted in the loss of around 10,000 civilian lives and over 200,000 military personnel so far. Many people have been forced to leave their homes and flee the country. Countries like United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Sweden and others have been supporting Ukraine financially and militarily. They have invested a lot of money and continue to support Ukraine even though they are uncertain when the war will end. In this video, let's explain the total cost of the war so far and the possible ways the war could come to an end. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has had a devastating impact, causing billions of dollars in damage to infrastructure and pushing an additional 8 million Ukrainians into poverty in 2022. The invasion has also led to the displacement of millions of Ukrainians. Furthermore, global food and energy prices have been increased due to the conflict. Ukraine's economic progress of 15 years has been undone, with its gross domestic product shrinking by 29%. A recent report from World Bank, Ukraine government, European Commission and United Nations shows that it will cost Ukraine a staggering $411 billion over the next 10 years to recover and rebuild from the Russia's war. Just to clean up of the destroyed towns and the cities, it will cost $5 billion. The war has caused significant damage with nearly 2 million homes destroyed. More than 1 in 5 public health institutions have been damaged and 650 ambulances either damaged or stolen. The estimated direct damage to buildings and infrastructure so far is around $135 billion. In addition to that, Russian forces blew up the Kakhovka Dam on June 6, 2023, causing over 30 communities flooded away and over 10,000 hectares of farmland turned into desert. Ukraine's Academy of Construction has claimed that it will cost $60 to $70 billion to restore the housing and infrastructure in Kherson Oblast that was damaged by the destruction of dam, and that reconstruction effort would take 5 to 10 years and require 1.5 million workers. So in case of Russia, due to the war, Russian military spending increased by an estimated 9.2% in 2022 to around $86.4 billion. This was equivalent to the 4.1% of Russia's gross domestic product in 2022, up from 3.7% of GDP in 2021. In Russia, the total spending on national defense saw the rise of 34% from financial figure in 2022, which was largely contributed by the war. It shows that invasion of Ukraine costed Russia far more than it anticipated. During the first 3 months of invasion, it was estimated that Russia was spending as much as $900 million per day to sustain its military efforts. Since the war is ongoing, these costs are expected to increase even further. As there is no clear winner and no sign of negotiation yet, it appears likely that the conflict will persist for at least another year. The Russian government is planning to spend about $48 billion on the war efforts in 2023. After Russia attacked Ukraine in February 2022, the United Nations and United States responded by imposing sanctions.
So today, I'm announcing the first tranche of sanctions to impose costs on Russia in response to their actions yesterday.
These sanctions froze Russia's foreign money reserve and limited Russia's central bank's use of dollars and euros. Leaders from the Western countries expected Russia's economy to collapse. When the invasion happened and the first sanctions were imposed, prices went up and people withdrew their money from the banks. However, Russia's GDP only fell by 2.1% in 2022. The International Monetary Fund believes that Russia's economy could grow by 0.7% in 2023. This is because Russia is exporting a lot of oil, specifically 8.3 million barrels per day. This is the highest level since April 2020, according to the International Energy Agency. The main buyers of Russian oil are India and China. Russia has also banned the exports of more than 200 goods from Western countries, including things like telecoms, medical supplies, vehicle, agricultural products, electrical equipment, and timber products. They are also preventing interest payments to foreign holders of Russian government's bonds and stopping Russian companies from paying dividends to overseas shareholders. Foreign investors who have a lot of money invested in Russia are not allowed to sell their investment. For now, Russia claims that the sanctions imposed by US and UN have not affected them much. However, they might face challenges in the future if the war continues. Some policymakers and analysts in America and Europe misunderstood the conflict and believe that Russia's claims of NATO expansion caused the war. It is true that the leaders in Ukraine wanted to join NATO because they have been facing aggression from Russia from the past 9 years. However, not all NATO members support Ukraine's membership, and the undisputed agreement is required for them to join. Currently, many allies are not willing to go to war with Russia on behalf of Ukraine, and Russia is aware of the situation. When Putin mentioned last June that Sweden and Finland joining NATO does not worry them, it indicates that Russia is not deeply concerned about NATO expanding. Additionally, the armed force of most NATO countries are not in good condition, while Russia has a large nuclear arsenal. The chances of Ukraine joining NATO are zero for at least the next 2 decades, and Ukraine does not pose any plausible threats to Russian security. Hence, the NATO expansion claimed by Russia may have provided a convenient excuse for Russia to invade Ukraine, but it is not entirely true. For Putin, Ukraine's existence challenges the Russian historical narrative that claims Kyiv as the mother of the Russian cities. Ukraine's separate national identity poses significant challenge to Russian identity, which matters greatly to hyper-nationalists and imperial revivalists like Putin. Moreover, Ukraine's commitment to democracy is seen as a tangible threat to Putin's portrayal of himself as a Russia's dictatorial savior. 1 year ago, very few analysts in the West and probably no one in Russia could have predicted that the Ukraine military would hold its ground until June 2023. Now Russia realizes that they cannot easily win the war and achieve their original goal. Military experts believe that Russia's plan to capture Kyiv and occupy a large part of Ukraine is unlikely to succeed. Regardless of the war's outcome, Ukraine will remain as an independent country in Europe and will be larger than what Russia initially intended. In the later part of 2022, Ukraine's military successfully pushed Russian force out of the Kharkiv region. They have the potential to liberate more occupied areas, but removing the entire Russian from Ukraine will be challenging due to the defensive positions prepared by the Russian army. The American intelligence community predicts that the war will likely become a prolonged struggle, with neither sides able to achieve a decisive victory. This could continue for months or even years. Now the question arises, what are the possible scenarios for the end of the Russian-Ukraine war? One possible scenario could be both Ukraine and Russia become too exhausted from fighting and consider entering into negotiation. However, Russia has shown no serious interest in negotiation so far. Despite losing territories, the Russian leadership have been making increasingly demanding requests to Kyiv. A resolution can only be reached if one side achieves a clear victory or if both sides agree to negotiate. Moscow has put forward demands that they likely won't be accepted. In early March 2022, the Ukrainian government attempted to negotiate to end the war. However, after a month of fighting with Russians, they realized that they could push back the Russian forces. As a result, the Ukrainian government has become more determined now. Surveys also indicate that the majority of the Ukrainians support continuing fighting to secure victory and are against the negotiations. So if no negotiations, then what are the other possibilities that could end the war? We all know that a long-lasting war won't benefit Ukraine, and it might become difficult for the West to continue supporting Ukraine in the future as well. So one option is for the West to provide significant military assistance and advanced weapons to Ukraine. This would help the Ukrainian military either push back the Russians or make enough progress on the battlefield to force Russians into a settlement that Ukraine can agree to. However, even with this settlement, Ukraine would still have to deal with Russia as an unfriendly neighbor. The West would need to work together with Ukraine to ensure that it has a strong and modern military capable of preventing any future Russian attacks. But there is another scenario to consider. So far, Russia has not fully utilized its air force and nuclear weapons. If the US and Europe provide Ukraine with sophisticated weapons, what will Russia do in the response? Vladimir Putin has already stated that he would do anything to protect Russia if a threat arises, referring to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki incidents during World War II. On June 16, 2023, Putin announced that the first batch of tactical nuclear weapons has been deployed to Belarus, and the remaining batches will be delivered by the end of the year. However, the US officials have stated that there is no indication that Russia is preparing to use the nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Putin is also aware that using nuclear weapons to conquer Ukraine could lead to the disastrous consequences, and Russian people are against such actions. So as of now, using nuclear weapon may not be the option for Russia. The longer the war continues, the more people from America, Europe, Ukraine and Russia will suffer. Western countries have already faced difficult decisions, and there are further unexpected challenges ahead. Regardless of the war's outcome, none of the parties involved in war will achieve their desired goal. Realistic compromises for the long term needed to be considered, even though it will be tough. Temporary agreements may provide a temporary halt to the fighting, although stability may be limited. The Ukrainian people are determined to achieve victory and believe in their capability to do so. The West, especially the United States, has publicly pledged support for Ukraine. This makes it difficult for the United States to propose compromises that Ukraine opposes, unless there are no other options. However, international politics can be rough and words alone may not hold much weight, and Ukraine understands this reality. Considering these factors, it is crucial to engage in discussion that can improve the current situation and find a resolution to end the ongoing conflict. The longer the war persists, the more suffering will occur. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do not forget to hit like button and subscribe this channel. I'll see you in the next video.